Hi, I'm Pastor Rhonda.
And I'm Pastor Seth.
You're listening to Growing Hope,
Living Faith. Well, welcome back to Growing Hope, Living Faith podcast. We are so glad that you are listening in as we are going to be continuing on the conversation of spiritual formation and spiritual disciplines and all of those fun things. And looking forward to today, we're going to be talking about some hard things. This stuff it's not always easy. Today, we're going to be talking about silence and solitude. We feel like a lot of that just kind of flows into Sabbath. And those are hard words sometimes for us to I guess ingest a little bit, maybe. I don't know. They're hard.
Because we're always on the go.
We are.
Which we've really been on the go lately.
Yes, we have.
Because we just got back from vacation and you guys are at Disney. We were at the beach.
Right.
And we came back and I started in a new class.
Yes.
And we had a big day at our church yesterday. We had
it was a fun day.
A Sunday fun day. And we had water slides for the kids and barbecue. Man, the barbecue was good.
Barbecue was so good, yeah.
It was really
I went
good.
and got a couple plates of barbecue, actually.
And watermelon.
I didn't do the bread, though, so I was trying to be a little good. I was trying to, so I didn't eat the bread with it. But
I had dessert. Did you eat dessert?
I did eat a couple different desserts, unfortunately. I guess that's where it made up for.
Me too. So, we had a cornhole tournament going on.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. It was hot.
It was very hot.
But it was a blessing because we really thought it was going to be rained out.
Yes.
And the rain just stayed away the whole time. So now this week, I'm leaving in the morning to drive to Adrian for camp meeting.
That's right. You're doing all the music. Do you have all your music ready to rock and roll?
Yes, I actually did because I had to turn in lyrics and stuff a long time ago. So I've got my music planned. I just need to practice it. So I guess I'll do a little bit of that tomorrow on the way down. But I'm so excited to be in church. Twice a day, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
We have Tyler Water-Smith. He's going to be talking about spiritual formation. That's really cool with this class and now our podcast.
That's
so
right.
I will be taking great notes
Yes.
and I will share what I learned from him.
That'd be awesome.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to make it down for camp, but we'll definitely be praying, and I know obviously people who are listening will be praying for you guys as well.
Please do.
So it's going to be good. So, well, awesome. Well, I mean, I'm ready to kind of jump, I think, into this. If you're ready to jump into this, and like I said, it's a very, very hard topic, and silence, we struggle with it.
Right.
Even in churches, like we don't take the time to truly to just be silent because everything within us, I mean, it just, we get we're so uncomfortable with silence.
Right. Are you one of those people that you have to sleep with the TV on and that kind of thing?
So we don't sleep with the TV on, but we don't sleep in silence because we actually have a box fan. Yeah. So even at night, we've got to have that noise. And it really is because there's so much just other noise going on in the world around us. And so, our kids sleep with a box fan. We sleep with a box fan just to have that noise to kind of drown out. But so that the silence is something that even at night, I don't even get silence.
And I won't have that at Adrian. I'm starting to think, I'll have to use that app. Mm-hmm. And I'll use a little app to lull me to sleep because I can't stand at nighttime just real quiet silence. Yeah. It is uncomfortable in church. And I mean, if you just ask everybody to be quiet, if you go 60 seconds, people are squirming. Yep. It's very uncomfortable. But before we can get silent, I think an obstacle to that is solitude. We need to be alone before we can ever get silent.
True silence. Yep. 100%. And that's when I really started using a box fan at night was when I was at college. And so I had suite mates. We had 7 suite mates. And you're not ever going to get quiet. Just guys have different routines, and some of them will be up late at night playing video games. And so, whenever I lost that solitude, of kind of being in a small home with a small family and all that kind of stuff, then that's when I kind of brought that in. And so, it was almost like life necessitated, I guess that, is that necessitated? Is that how you say it? I don't know. It's like life, needed that. And so, but then, once I left college, I had been so used to it. Cause then I worked at my university for 4 years after that. And so I was in that same environment for 8 years. And then, once I left, it was like, you gotta have it.
Right.
Gotta have it. Right. So that's what happens. I was there's this video I watched before we did this, and it was very interesting. He kind of quoted a guy who said in 1968 he recorded nature sounds, and so his goal was to just try to record nature and all that. In 1968, in order to get 1 hour of I guess true nature sound that didn't have any other sound in it, whether it be airplanes or cars or whatever, he had to record for 15 hours to be able to get that 1 hour of just actual nothing but nature, nothing but that which he was trying to get. Today, and this was even filmed probably 10 years ago, that same hour to be able to get where there's no other sounds, no other sound that you don't want, takes 2,000 hours to be able to get that. That's how much just noise and sound we have going on. Like I said, that's out in nature. If you think if you live in town, and then even with the advent of social media and all that, and you say, well, that's not noise, but it is noise.
It is mental noise.
I mean, there is always things that are just being thrown at us.
Right. We're overstimulated.
Deep.
Yes, we are. And I do think it's hard. I guess it depends on what kind of season is a little easier for me to steal away and be alone and have like a time of solitude and incorporate complete silence in that, because we're empty nesters. So sad. But yeah, our kids are grown. And so one of my classmates at Trevecca, she was writing about her experience of silence, and she said she couldn't. There is absolutely no possible way she could ever be completely silent. But she did use this little time where she was driving her kids to the doctor, and she put on a little music that just lulled them to sleep.
Right.
And she had this little time in the car where she was intentional about just trying to, hush everything out of her mind. But I told her today, I wrote a response, and I said, this is such a season. You're in one of those seasons where longer the days, short are the years. Yeah. So this is going to change, but man, it's really a challenge. And for moms, that are stay-at-home moms, you might have to take a little longer of a shower, or you might. And here's the thing too, accept help. I mean, if you do have family or friends or neighbors or people that you can trust with your kids, by all means, take them up on it and just steal away some time, because it's so important.
That's right. Like you just said, it is very, very important. This is something that, it can very much form us and shape us and allow us to experience God on a totally different level. When we're able to kind of get alone and we're able to quieten everything down and not have distractions going on in our life, what we'll often find is, and I think a lot of times people don't continue to do this, is because what they find is that their mind becomes the noise.
Yeah. That was my experience, because I went right by my textbook, and it says, if silence is new for you, begin with 10 minutes. So I thought I could do this for 10 minutes because it's pretty quiet here. So I set the timer, and I got comfortable, and I did the deep breathing and, let everything out. And it was like my own thoughts just would not, I remembered everything, like putting clothes in the dryer and don't forget to pick this up and don't forget to do this and do that. And then, the accusing thoughts started, like, why are you doing this? This is stupid. And, you don't have enough time to just sit still in a chair and be quiet. But I did, and I found it very beneficial, because before it was all said and done, I had tears rolling down my cheeks, because I was just I was connecting with my heart, the deepest levels of my heart, without, any distractions, and just listening to what God had to say.
Right. And this is a discipline, right? All disciplines, they take practice and it takes time. And so this one is a very, very tough one, like I said, because we can get everything quiet around us, but then sometimes it's hard for us, like I said, to get quiet. And sometimes when we get quiet, we get tired, right? And that's a bad thing either.
Well, that was my first thing. When I first sat down and I started settling down with my deep breathing and just complete silence, it was in the morning, and I felt sleepy, and I thought, I'm going to fall asleep. Yeah. And I think that's because that's our culture. We are just so overstimulated. We don't get enough rest. We don't get just plain simple sleep that's uninterrupted.
That's right. On a deep level. I have 2 kids too, and so I rarely go through a night without waking up 2 or 3 times and having to deal with.
I remember those days. I remember
But it's, like I said, we don't wish that away. We're thankful for the moment that we are in, and we're trying to enjoy every moment that we're in. But it does affect our sleep. It affects a lot of different things. But that's why people, I think, give up on this so easily. And then sometimes when we're alone and we're with our thoughts, or trying to meditate, trying to do some of those things, we don't like maybe some of the things we actually think through. But this really is a discipline, and the reason we want to talk about this is because we really believe it can be formational in getting closer to God and trying to understand God a little bit deeper. And that's why it's so important that we continue to push and we continue to practice this discipline over and over and over again, because this discipline is actually found quite a bit throughout Scripture as well.
Right. That's true. I'm thinking of Jesus. He withdrew a lot to go pray. And again, sometimes it's just getting away and saying, here I am, Lord, here I am. Yeah. And we see that, all through Scripture. But you had a great passage. Was it Elijah? Yeah,
so absolutely. When I think of silence and solitude, this is one of the passages that I come to pretty frequently, to really kind of inform, because, God, I think all of us would say that God desires to talk to us, right? He desires. Now, it's easy for us sometimes to try to do all the talking. And even when we get silent, we just want to talk. But I think silence and solitude is really about quieting yourself and getting to a place where you really begin to listen, right? Because you want to hear the voice of God. And in order for us to really hear the voice of God, we actually have to be willing to listen. But, Elijah has been going through so many things. And there's this great passage that so many people love where he's on the on Mount Carmel with all the prophets of Baal. And we love that story.
The big showdown.
Yeah, the big showdown.
It's exciting.
We love that story. And
Except
I love that story.
When they all get killed.
Right.
That's a little gross. Anyway, continue.
But maybe we do like parts of that too. You know what I'm saying? Like, and sometimes we can get behind that maybe more than we can get behind other things. But there's this great thing, he runs for his life. And I think actually before this too is he does prophesy the drought. Right. And so that there's going to be a drought, but then he begins to run for his life, and he's scared of what's going to happen. And he gets tired, or he's tired from running, and an angel of the Lord comes to him and feeds him, right? And he falls asleep, when it's kind of that tiredness we were talking about.
Yeah, and while you're on that thought, this is my ADD kicking in. But you look at Scripture, and usually in any other time that you see where an angel has appeared, usually the first word is fear not, because they're so scared. He was so doggone tired that he wasn't even afraid that an angel appeared. He was that exhausted. So the angel fed him. So I could just picture it. He's laying there, and the angel puts food in his mouth and eats it, and he goes right back to sleep because he is that exhausted, that tired.
Right.
And we get that way because we're overstimulated and we are just tired.
Yeah. And that happens twice. The angel wakes him up again, feeds him, and he falls back asleep again. So, it just tells you the exhaustion that life has really been hard on Elijah.
Right, it's
draining, on such deep level. And when the angel of the Lord comes to him again, and he kind of complains and says, "Oh, I'm the only one left for the service for the Lord," and all this. The angel says, "Hey, God's going to come talk to you. And so you need to go and get ready." So he goes in this cave, and this is where this passage picks up essentially. It says this: "The Lord said, 'Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by.'" And this is coming from 1 Kings 19, starting at verse 11. It says this: "Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart, and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake."
That would be terrifying.
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine. Especially if you're in the mountain, right? Like you were in there, and all these rocks and stuff are tearing apart around you.
Rumbling. Go ahead.
Can't imagine what that was. Yeah. "After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. And then the voice said to him, 'What are you doing here, Elijah?'"
He knew it. Yeah. It's because he's heard that voice before. Yeah. He knew it.
Yeah, we often translate that gentle whisper as gentle whisper. It's how it's lots of times translated in English. If you actually go back to the original language, it is this. It's silence. Is what it is. It's in the silence. It's not this gentle whisper, but it's God is going to speak to Elijah, and how he is going to speak to Elijah is it's in the silence that he's going to speak. And then that's what happens.
Right.
God speaks to him in the silence. And, I love this about God. It's so good. We don't have, in order for us to hear from God, we don't have to have this craziness, big things going on in life. God doesn't, and he can speak through whatever he desires to speak through, but it's not the fire. It's not this great, big, extravagant thing that's going on around him. It's not the earthquake. Like I said, something that would scare and it's trembling. It's not in this strong wind. It's not in all of these things that are great and huge and big. But there's something about the silence, that God speaks in the silence. God's not going to force his voice into our lives, but there is something that if we really, really want to hear from God and experience God and be able to listen to God, there is something about the silence, that is where God will truly meet us and talk to us, is in the silence. He's not going to force his way in. It's not going to be in all these big, crazy, and like I said, God will speak in those things, but if we really, really want to hear, there's something about the silence.
So that means we have to create the space. God does the transforming work. He does the transformation, but we create spaces and we position ourselves and we open our hearts before him. And if we're never pulling away, if we're never still, if we're never quiet, and if we're not turning off the rest and the noise, will we ever hear that still small voice? If the TV's blaring, will we hear it? If there's just so much talk all around us, good music, I mean, you can have good music, and I know God can speak through that. But what does he want to say to your heart? Yeah. What does he want to speak to you?
Yeah, and like I said, I think sometimes we don't want to deal with the problems of life, right? Because Elijah's going through so many problems, right? He's worried that people are going to kill him. He's worried that people are after him. He's worried that he's the only one left. He's worried. There's all of these fears, and there's all of these things that essentially are going on in Elijah's life. And we have fears in our lives. And sometimes we're so afraid of our fears, we don't want to get silent, and we don't want the noise to stop, because when the noise stops, we're afraid we've got to deal with the things that we don't want to deal with the issues, the fears, the whatever you want to say it is. But it's only when we really begin to get quiet.
Right. That's where it starts.
That's where God will begin to speak into those things. And like I said, I think Elijah goes from this point, and he's better off for it, right? He's in such a much better state. But if he had never gotten to this point, then how would this story potentially turn out?
Right. And I think for us, it's a matter of practicing it. It's a matter of just doing it. Even if it requires setting a timer for 10 minutes a day. I know sometimes, practically speaking, I can get really distracted with my thoughts. It's usually the things I need to do, but I'll just keep a running to-do list. If it's something that needs to be done, I mean, sometimes it's legitimate thoughts, but just keep a list. And say, I'll get to it later, but it's not going to distract me from what I'm doing right now. If it's that important, I'll write it down. If it's not important, then I'll just, dismiss it. But it starts with starting small, but it's a practice.
That's right.
It's something that you have to not just try it today, but it's creating rhythms in your life that just make space for God.
Yep. And the Jewish people would have called that Sabbath.
Sabbath.
Yep.
Right.
On a very deep level. They had this huge practice of Sabbath. And I've always heard and related this idea of Sabbath is simply to this thought process of stop.
Right.
Stop. Just stop everything, right? Stop. And that's so hard for us to do in the world that we live in.
It is. And I've read a book, and I need to go back and reread it, but it's called Mud House Sabbath, and I got it last year at PowCon, but it went into great detail about the Jewish people and what they do, what they don't do. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me is this whole idea of creating, that, if you're a creative mind and you're constantly creating, that just breaks. I mean, you have to stop creating for that time period. And then when you pick back up, it's like you're renewed, you're refreshed to be able to do that again. And is it Friday night, like sundown till
Saturday night?
Saturday night, yeah.
It's a 24-hour period.
24 hours.
Sundown to sundown, yes.
Right. And that means, like, I mean, this book I was reading, that they don't even cook. Like, you have to plan ahead. You have to know, what you're doing. But everyone in the family does it. So this is, something that everybody does in that culture. And it's very beautiful. And when I read through the book, I thought, I would love to incorporate some of that, because it's really hard to take a 24-hour period on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I don't think I can do that at this point in my life. And even as an empty nester, I don't have a 24 hours on a weekly basis that I can just forfeit. But I can do half days, and I can do, maybe quarterly, take a whole day, or, at least be mindful of our bodies are made to rest. And I know I just go. Yep. And, a lot of times Eric was laughing at me because we kayaked last week, and we had to walk up this little hill to see, we parked our kayaks, and then we hiked up. I say hiked. We went up a little hill to see some waterfalls, but I was sore from that. And he was like, that was one hill. But sometimes we can push our bodies and push our minds. I push my mind. If I could count calories for all my thoughts, man. But we push our minds and we push ourselves so much that we do need more than just a moment of silence, more than 10 minutes of silence, but we need to unplug for longer periods of time occasionally. Even if you can't do it weekly, try to do it monthly.
Yeah. And, the beautiful thing is Jesus comes on the scene, and he's, his disciples did stuff on Sabbath. He obviously healed on the Sabbath, and he puts Sabbath where it's really supposed to be. Sabbath is for man not for the Sabbath, which is a beautiful thing. Once again, it's a beautiful thing. And I think Jesus was very big on this mentality of Sabbath, of silence, solitude, of withdrawing, of doing what he needed to do to make sure that he was connected. And I think it's important for us to keep Sabbath in that place, but there needs to be moments in our life where we are practicing Sabbath. We've got to have these moments where we really are stopping. And, I think lots of times we don't observe or practice Sabbath because we don't necessarily trust in God, right? We live in a country, and maybe not everybody listening lives in America, but we live in a day and time where we say time is money, right? Like if I'm breathing or if I'm awake, then I'm going to be doing what I've got to do to make sure that I'm getting ahead, to make sure that I'm doing whatever you want to do or however you want to define it. But to be a follower of Jesus, we say, that we trust in God, and we trust in his providing ability. And so for us, it is our trust that leads us to this place of Sabbath to say, we're going to trust. Like, could I potentially be doing something to earn money? Could I potentially be doing something that is valuable? Yes, I potentially could. But you know what? I am going to honor God and trust that if I invest this time and this energy into this silent solitude Sabbath, then God is going to take care of me, and he's going to provide for me, and he's going to do all of those things. And I'm going to be in a much better position, just emotionally, physically, health-wise. If I do these things, I'm going to trust that God's going to be God, and he's going to take care of. And, I've heard story after story after story, and I'm not necessarily going to tell one today, but of people who've actually really, really practiced Sabbath. When they actually practice Sabbath and they are committed to it on the weekly, and they are committed to silence and solitude kind of all throughout the week, not just necessarily on their Sabbath day. I mean, when they are committed to this mentality of taking Sabbath, it's amazing how God shows up. Right. And they get done probably more in 6 days than they ever did in 7 days before they really begin to monitor it. And so I don't know. Sorry. I just noticed something. There's a little piece of fuzz flying around my head. So I just tried to grab it. But that God, he does step in, and he does show up. And I think that's why it was so pivotal for the Hebrew people. And we see it even in the very, very beginning of the book, that God takes a day and he rests after this creation, that's how we are created. If we are going to be in his image and be created in his image, we've got to take these moments where we are actually going to rest and let our body rest and let our minds rest and reconnect and make sure that we are staying connected to the vine.
We have to. I mean, and he's the one that created us. He's the one that designed us. He knows how we work. He knows every part of our bodies. He knows that he did not design us to go 24/7,
right.
Like we want to do. Like we never want to slow down, but our bodies can't do it.
Yeah, we can't do it. And like I said, we weren't created that way. I think God's pretty smart,
Right.
And I think there's a great example of this too, there are restaurants, obviously like Chick-fil-A, the Lord's Chicken, whatever you want to call it.
Chick-fil-A.
But they practice this.
Right.
And man, you can't go by Chick-fil-A without it being 100% packed pretty much all the time. You know what I'm saying? And like a lot of people would look at that and they'd say, well, just think about how much more money they can make on a Sunday. But maybe there's something to the mentality, you know what, that they are going to allow their workers to have that day where no workers are going to be working.
I love it.
And you know what I'm saying? Like everything is going to be fallow and everything is going to just be laid and put to rest for one day. And so maybe there is something to them really being able to do that.
Oh, I believe so. I definitely believe so. And I think, too, our day and time and, our culture in America, and I think we touched on this last week about consumerism. When is enough? And, a lot of people that are self-employed, I think, struggle with taking, because, a lot of businesses are closed, maybe on the weekends or, not my husband because he's keeping lights on for people or, medical workers. But yeah, I think a lot of self-employed people have a harder time because it is up to them, to put the bread on the table. It is on them. So, but when is enough? Yeah. And that's where we have to draw the lines and say, my temple, I am the temple. You've given me this body. My mind needs to rest. My body needs to rest. And like you said, you'll accomplish more in a rested state than ever.
Yeah. And you'll have more joy and you'll have more hope and you'll be able to love people a whole lot better and you'll have a whole lot more peace in your life. Like all of this flows together with everything we're talking about lectionary, with the patterns of our life. Like you said, it all comes back to those patterns of our life. The ultimate question is, God, are we going to trust you? That you're going to keep your end of the deal, that you're going to be truly God of our lives. You're going to be a provider. You're going to be the one that does all those things for us. And trust is a hard issue for a lot of people. We all have trust issues, I think, on a deep level. Right.
And again, this is a practice that you have to do on a continual basis. Yes. It's not something you can do this week and then say, oh, I tried that. But you do. This is practices that we incorporate into our rhythms of life. So that means other things have to go. And I think that can be hard, because it's like, okay, I've got to let go the potential to make money today, or I've got to let it go. And it's all, again, it boils down to trust. Good job.
On a deep level.
Yeah. Good thought.
On a deep level. Yeah. And like I said, we're not trying to discourage you, or we don't want you to say, oh man, I'm not having Sabbath, or I'm not taking the silence times, and say, man, I'm not a very good Christian. And that's not the reality, or I'm not a good follower of Jesus. But we would just encourage you, take 10 minutes, like you said, just take 10 minutes and start with 10 minutes. And then, a couple weeks later, try to up to 15 minutes or 11 minutes, don't even, just try to begin to practice this and incorporate this discipline into your life. And we believe that you will see the fruit.
Right.
I'm going to be honest. I'm not 100% the best at this. I'm not. I wish I was better at this. When I was pastoring, I was actually pretty good. I was always made sure that there was a day where I didn't answer the phone. I didn't do anything for work. And my wife was very adamant about that I had a day where when it came to work, I just left it behind. Now that I'm not I'm kind of in the secular world a little bit, it's a little bit different. And so I'm trying to figure out what this new rhythm potentially is. But man, figure out that rhythm, figure out that pattern. It doesn't have to be Sunday, just find a day or find some time that you can have that silence, that solitude, that you can invest potentially just in relationship, invest in your family, invest in, some of those things that really, I guess, make you click or whatever, and man, invest those opportunities. Like I said, I think God will bless it on a deep level.
Be brave to unplug.
Yeah.
Now with technology, I mean, that's such a game changer because people can, it used to be, probably you're too young. You don't know what it was like when you just had a phone.
No, I do. I got my first cell phone as a sophomore in college.
Okay, so maybe you do understand. But there used to be a time that if anybody wanted you, they called your phone and you had the option. But now it's just in your hand, and if they can't get you calling you, they'll text you or email you or Facebook message you or Instagram or Twitter. You name it. People can get a hold of you 24/7.
Yep.
And it's so important to draw boundaries around that and say, you know what? I'm going to turn this off. And, there's been times that I've done that and I've told Eric, or I've told my people, my kids, I'm turning off my phone today. If you need me, get in touch with Dad, But we need to do that for each other because I think that's a huge obstacle. There's a lot of noise with TV and the things that we mentioned, but just being available 24/7 is hard.
Yep. And find somebody. Like if you say, all right, that's good. This is my I guess characteristic, or I don't know how you define this, but like if there's something I really want to do, I will do good for like 2 weeks, like just knocking it out of the park. But then after that like 2 week mark, it starts to kind of fall by the wayside. So tell somebody what you're doing too, right?
Yeah.
Like tell somebody, and we're going to be talking about accountability probably down the road a little bit, but find somebody who understands the importance of it and who will be willing to ask you the hard questions to say, hey, did you turn off your electronics? Did you spend, and like you said, you can just tell them, hey, my goal is I just want to spend 10 minutes 3 times a week right now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, and they'll ask you, hey, did you get your time in? And then be honest with them and say, you know what, I didn't. And not that they're going to beat you down, but they can encourage you and can try to push you as you are I guess, developing this discipline, developing this ability to be able to do this. But find somebody that's willing to journey with you and like, don't do it. You don't have to do this on your own.
Right.
You don't have
and
to
feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah,
you can email us at growinghopelivingfaith@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on our Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook page is Growing Hope Living Faith Podcast.
Yes, and let us know how it's going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you may have a great experience to share or a funny story to share. So we would love to hear from you if you decide to start this especially if it's new. But we would just love to hear from you and how you're growing in this discipline, in this rhythm of your life.
That's right, because you're not alone. You're not alone.
Because I am just learning too.
We're growing just as much as anybody else is growing.
We're growing in hope and living out our faith.
That's what we're trying to do. We do appreciate you listening so much. And like I said, feel free to reach out to us. And I look forward to the continued conversation. Yes. I feel like today was a lot of fun. It's very challenging for us, but we hope that you've been challenged and you've been encouraged all in the same right. We hope you know that we love you, that God loves you. And man, we hope you have a great rest of your week. Grace and peace. God bless. Bye-bye.